You're watching the Hallowed Chambers on TVC News. I am TJ Su Adewi.
The Nigerian Senate has passed the 21.82 trillion appropriation bill for the year 2023. The Senate also approved the sum of 819 billion as supplementary budget, as well as the finance bill for the year 2022. The passage followed the presentation of reports by relevant Senate committees of the upper legislative chamber.
I think immediately the budget is passed, pending when the funds will start coming into the coffers of agencies or MDs or ministries. This will allow for the quick implementation, expedited implementation process of our budget. Probably if I had this kind of situation, we would have requested for extension of the budget. I'm also delighted about the change of organogram of IFRS. I think this will really put FRS in a way that it will perform very well. The corporate arrangement will be better in terms of the achievement. The FRS will begin to churn out after this implementation. After this amendment has been done. Mr. President, to submit.
175,770 naira. Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, 704 billion, 789 million, 762,043 naira. Federal Capital Territory Administration, 30 billion naira. Federal Ministry of Water Resources, 15 billion 500 million naira. Aggregate total is 819 billion 536 million 937,813 naira only. Those in favor of this schedule stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it.
The House of Representatives on Wednesday approved 21.82 trillion naira as a 2023 budget. It also honored President Muhammadu Buhari's request for 819.53 billion as supplementary budget to the 2022 Appropriation Act.
Mr. Speaker, having thoroughly examined the reports and inputs of subcommittees, the committee hereby recommends to the House to approve the bill for an act to authorize the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation for the sum of 21,827,188,747,391 naira only, which 967,486,10,536 naira is for statutory transfers. 6,557,611,797 naira only is for debt service, while 8,329,370,195,637 naira only is for recurrent net expenditure, while the sum of 5,972,734,929,421 naira only is for the contribution to development fund for capital expenditure for the year ending 31st December 2023. Mr. Chairman, my colleagues, on behalf of the Appropriation Committee, we wish to thank the Speaker of the House and the entire leadership of the House for the support given to the committee in processing the bill. We also appreciate the cooperation of and understanding of our appropriations subcommittees and our colleagues who submitted and defended their reports after weeks of rigorous budget engagement activities. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Our own national interests of the government and our people. Thank you. Clause 1, Clause 2, Clause 3, Explanatory memoranda, long title of the bill. Thank you.
Nigeria's House of Representatives has kicked off investigations into the alleged loss of over $2.4 billion revenue from illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil exports in 2015. It is also turning its probe on crude oil sales from 2014 till date. At its inaugural meeting, the ad hoc committee executing the probe assured all whistleblowers of confidentiality for every information provided. The committee says it is still gathering memoranda from stakeholders and calls for the support from all concerned in the overall interest of the country.
First of all, there's a salient issue of a whistleblower in 2020 who raised allegations that certain individuals at the time in government and some allegedly still serving conspired to sell 48 million barrels of Nigeria's crude, which resulted in the country's loss of over $2.4 billion. So it is important to point out the fact that our job, in line with our constitutional mandate in Section 88 and 89, is to investigate. And with regards to the occurrence of this issue, it only came to the fore, like several other issues, several years later. Even though the matter occurred in 2015, it was only brought to the fore by a whistleblower towards the end of 2020. And remember, that was the COVID period. And in the time between when that allegation came up and now, there has also been the issue of trying to identify the whistleblowers, trying to determine whether or not there was even a reason to commence this investigation. Like I told you earlier, these are individuals who have been expressing fear. So of course, they were a little skeptical about providing information until they saw that the House was serious about proceeding with the investigation, that they started reaching out. So that is what informed. So the fact that it occurred in 2015 and we're only having this investigation now is due to the fact that the issue itself only came to the fore towards the end of 2020, and we had to ensure engagement with the involved individuals and to ascertain their identities, because we cannot be involved in spurious investigations.
Port Harcourt will go live after our visit, after our discussions. We go live first quarter of 2023. Port Harcourt will go. So that is a way forward. At least if we're able to refine some of our crude oil here, we will reduce oil subsidy in the country.
The Nigerian Senate has stepped down President Buhari's request to approve 22.7 trillion naira of Ways and Means advances for further legislative action. But the Senate approved 819 billion to be excised of a 40-year tenure with an interest rate of 9% from an additional 1 trillion Ways and Means advance. The approved money is scheduled to fund the 2022 supplementary budget already approved by the National Assembly.
These Senate do receive and consider the report of the Senate Committee on Finance on the report of restructuring of Ways and Means advances 2023. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, I so move.
Expenditure can be made by the government. One of it is through budgeting. The next is through supplementary budget as provided in the Constitution. Now, I don't know where the law comes from, where we have to spend money or restructure expenditures through Ways and Means.
Mr. President, we go to the CBN Act, Section 38. It says this: notwithstanding the provision of Section 34D of this Act, Bank may be grant temporary advances to the federal government in respect of temporary deficiency of budget revenue at such rate of interest of these. 2, the total amount of such advances outstanding shall not at any time exceed 5% of the previous year's actual revenue of the federal government. All advances made pursuant to this section shall be repaid, A, as soon as possible, and shall in any event be repayable by the end of the federal government financial year in which they are granted. And if such advances remain unpaid at the end of the year, the power of the bank to grant such further advances in any subsequent year shall not be exercisable unless the outstanding advances have been paid. Mr. President, having said this, please give me a standing orders. Having said this, permit me to take you to Order 9 and 10. Order 9 is on privileges. Let me read 10.
You may proceed.
Any senator may rise at any time to speak upon a matter of privilege suddenly arising, and he shall be prepared to move without notice a motion declaring that a content of breach of privilege has been committed, or referring the matter to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. But if the matter is raised in Committee of the whole Senate, the chairman shall leave the chair and report progress. My colleague, please, can read 11 and 9. Mr. President, we came into this chamber today and we are giving a report of the Committee on Finance on asking for securitization of 22.71 trillion, which has been spent, according to him, in the past 10 years. Whether it is 10 years, it is 5 years, whatever it is 7 years or 6 years. The issue is that such payments, such money that are taken, as soon as they are taken, the Senate should be informed. And then we look at it all, we should be advanced with information, a request that such money is going to be taken. Because it's being taken on behalf of the people of Nigeria. And we are entrusted with the power to make laws. And we will not appropriate, according to the law of the Constitution, we can appropriate. They don't just ask for the fund. The fund must be asked in accordance with a requirement or request that we are using this fund for A, B, C, D, E.
We should just remember what we said in the closed session. And it is only right that having agreed at the closed session, that we take it as we agreed in the closed session. And the understanding in the closed session was that the 819 will be excised from this. So why should someone shout him down again? So it's no. It's taking it out of that. That's, in fact, we listened to some of our colleagues with finance background to tell us how to excise it, and it was agreed that we excise it and leave the rest until. So please.
The National Assembly is a busy place. As the bastion of democracy, it is a place where bills are presented, motions debated, laws made, and the yearnings of the people are laid bare. Come with us as we take you through the workings of the National Assembly. We take you through plenary, committee meetings, and probes, all to ensure smooth working of the democratic process. The Nigerian Senate has asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to extend its deadline for the implementation of the cash withdrawal policy to the 31st of June 2023. The resolution followed a point of order raised by the lawmaker representing Borno South Senatorial District, Senator Ali Ndume. The lawmaker is seeking the time extension because he believes the time frame for the implementation of the policy is too short and could inflict hardship on the masses if due diligence is not done. His observation earned the support of other lawmakers who agreed with his view and urged the Apex Bank to consider the time extension.
You have all agreed. It is actually the need the urgent need to extend the withdrawal of old currency from circulation. Distinguished colleagues notes that this Senate that many Nigerian banks on Thursday, 15 December, opened their vault to customers and depositors to exchange their old currency for the newly redesigned currency, which has a stipulated deadline of 31st January. That is 4 weeks from now. Aware that some Nigerians are already envisaging rush and long queues in the banking hall across the country as a result of people trying to get access to the new Naira note, which was unveiled last month by Mr. President at a brief ceremony in the State House. Aware also that the old notes are expected to be in circulation along the new ones until January 31st, when the old notes are expected to be phased out. It is expected that many Nigerian businesses will start to reject the old notes as soon as the banks started paying out redesigned notes to customers. Observes that access to the new notes may be compounded by recent circular by the CBN, which limit the amount of cash withdrawal to and corporate entities to withdraw within certain period of time. For instance, the CBN said individuals could only withdraw up to 100,000 per week, while corporate could only have access to 500. That is the reverse one per week through over the counter. Observes that access to large quantity of cash above the limit would attract processing fee of 5% and 10% for individuals and corporate bodies respectively. Large withdrawals are also subjected to scrutiny of regulatory bodies to determine the importance and usage of such cash. Convinced that if the withdrawal of old notes from circulation is not extended beyond 31st, many Nigerians will be thrown into hardship, and to avoid the repeat of 1984 experience withdrawal of old notes, accordingly resolved to urge the central bank to urgently extend the withdrawal date from 31st January to 31st June 2023.
If we insist on the date given by the CBN, it will cause a lot of losses to our rural dwellers. And certainly, majority of our people live in rural areas where there are no banks and there are no even POS. So it is appropriate to extend the time as suggested in the motion. I urge all my colleagues to support this very important motion for the benefit of our people.
From 31st January to June 31st, 2023, say aye. Aye. Those against say nay, the ayes have it.
Members representing Sagbama Ekeremo Federal Constituency of Bayelsa State, Frederick Agbedi, has lent support to the resolution of the Senate demanding an immediate return of Atala marginal field to his state. The legislator also called for the prosecution of alleged imposters laying claim to the oil field.
The issue of Atala field dispute was a sore narrative in the history of the oil industry in Nigeria. Hence, we are so happy that thorough investigation has exposed the heels of a demonic deal. An injustice to Bayelsa State. The Jerusalem of Ijaw land is an injustice to the entire Ijaw nation, who stood in defense of the restoration of the Atala marginal field. This commendation is born out of my sincere conviction and belief that the decision is one that is just, patriotic, selfless, equitable, and in accordance with good conscience. I wish to urge that the perpetrators of this act be brought to justice through the law enforcement and anti-corruption agencies as a way of strengthening our institutions. Sometime in 2021, we got to know that Bayelsa Atala farms that was allocated to Bayelsa has been reallocated to another company. Bayelsans and the Ijaw nation and my federal constituency, the Sagbama Ekeremo federal constituency, rose in protest against it. Mr. President some time ago also ordered that 10 of such marginal fields that were allocated to the states should be returned back to the states. 9 were returned. Only Bayesa's Atala farm was not returned. And this was what caused the Bayelsa government, the Bayelsa Oil Company, and our investors to petition to the Senate Committee on Petition and Ethics. Even within the hearing period, Mr. President further ordered that this block be returned to Bayelsa State Government, the owners of the oil block. This had not happened until the Senate finally last week had resolved, through proper investigation and hearings, found out that all the issues canvassed as to purchase, as to sales, and as to ownership by the new company, Atkins Oil, were fraudulent, were not true. And so the Senate resolved that the oil block should be reverted, restored back to Bayelsa State Government, which is almost the last bus stop, because from the executive arm of government, it has gone to the legislature. The legislature has also affirmed that this oil block should be restored to Bayelsa. And of course, as a representative of where the oil block is found, where the oil block is located, it is important that I stand on behalf of the people to appreciate what the legislature has done, as well as what the executive has done, and to further urge that this process should be completed. No stumbling block should be seen again, should be found again in the course of restoring this oil block. And of course, if the Senate in their findings found out that the narrative for which Harkins or whichever partners claimed that the oil blocks belonged to them were fraudulent, then of course, for us to strengthen our institutions, we need to hand over such individuals or corporate organizations to the anti-corruption agencies and law enforcement agencies, so that criminal investigation will be caused, and then where culprits are identified, they should be prosecuted. It is only by so doing that our institutions will be so strengthened.
The House of Representatives has called for thorough investigations into the Christmas Day extrajudicial killing of a pregnant housewife, Omobolanle Raheem, by a drunk police officer. The lawmakers also condemned the December 7th killing in similar circumstances of one Gafar Braimo by officers from the same police unit, which sparked some unrest.
The House notes that on Sunday, December 25th, 2022, Mrs. Raheem and her family were returning from church when they were pulled over in Ajah area by officers of the Nigerian police. Without any altercation, one of the officers, ASP Drambi Vandi, aimed at and pulled his trigger, killing Mrs. Raheem on the spot. Mrs. Raheem was 7 months pregnant with twins. Mr. Speaker, concerned that the same incident happened earlier in the month, 7th of December to be precise, by officers from the same Ajiwe police station, gunned down a young man by the name Gafaru Braimo, which sparked a bit of civic unrest. Mr. Speaker, worried that this type of occurrence happens often across Nigeria, and that the officers usually get away with shooting and killing same innocent citizens they swore to protect. Mr. Speaker, our prayer is that we should have a 1-minute silence in honor of the 2 gun victims in my constituency in the month of December. That an immediate investigation be carried out to get justice for the 2 victims. Mr. Speaker, police officers should be banned from consuming alcohol and other hard substances that is capable of inhibiting their sense of reasoning and capability to carry out their duties judiciously. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, that there should be a zero-tolerance policy to misconduct or misbehavior in the Nigerian Police Act.
That is all on the program this week. Thank you for watching. I am Tijesu Adeyi. See you next time.